our teacher training is intent versus impact. This is, I think, where so much of the gray, the confusion, the struggle happens is I had good intention, but my impact hurt you or was negative. So there's an article in the manual. It's a link. And we just want you to, it doesn't have to be now, but if you want to do it now, you can read it now. If you want to go to the bathroom, you can go to the bathroom. We're just going to leave it up here. Just think about a time when you had good intentions, but you saw the impact that it made on someone else and it didn't feel good to them, right? This is so common in acro. It's so common in the world. It's so common in, like, right now when we're talking about anti-racism work, that people are like, well, I had a good intention. But just because you had your good intention doesn't mean the other person heard you in the way you thought you were speaking. Doesn't mean they felt the way you intended to make them feel. So we just want you to give a moment. It doesn't have to be now. You can do it later tonight if you need a break. And think about intent versus impact, and some time in your life that your intention didn't match up with the impact it had on someone. Right?
Yeah. And we are gonna, when we come back, we'll talk about it for 1 minute.
Yeah, we'll talk about it for a minute and then we'll move on to spotting. So okay. I'm going to leave this here.
Can we bring up the page that's the...
Sure, I'll leave it up as a screen so you can actually read it if you would like to.
Yeah, like that. Perfect.
And it should go right to page 75.
Will, if you give it a second.
Yeah. I'm going to leave this on the screen. And that way, if you want to read it here, it may be a bit hard to
smaller, do. I guess.
Yeah.
How about post a link? Put the link, take the link.
Sure, of course.
And put it in the chat. Okay, great. So we're going to put the link in the chat. It doesn't fit all in the screen share. But yeah, so take a look at that and read it over. We're going to give you like 5-7 minutes. Go to the bathroom, do whatever you got to do. And then we'll come back in, talk a little bit more about intent versus impact, and then we're going to move on to safety. Sound good? Break starting now.
Woo! 5 minutes.
Are you playing a video game, Hobbs? I can't hear you.
I'm reading the article. Why?
I don't know. I just saw you staring at the screen and I was like, what's he doing?
You look like you were killing dragons on it.
That's my part-time job.
Mhm.
Hey, Hobbs, I'm going to call you real quick, okay?
Telephone now.
Hey, Lizzie, could you ask people just in this beginning, like first weekend maybe, to each time they talk, be like, hey, and I'm Carrie, just so we can get to know them better?
I have asked them once, twice, maybe 3 times. I'll do it again. It's hard to remember to say your Lizzie. It's hard to remember to say your name every time we talk.
Debbie, and I know this is going to help me learn to pronounce some names too, because I'm really stuck on a few of them.
Yeah.
If mine happens to be one of them you're stuck on, it's just like Carl, but with a T. Tarl. A lot of people seem to come up with other names for me, like Tom.
Mine is also hard. Janae, like Renee with a J, but I'm getting every other option. Just FYI.
My full name is Waka Painia, but feel free to call me Waka.
Is anyone using my screen share to read right now? Because I'm going to stop share in a moment. Nope. Okay. Great. Where'd it go, babe?
It's a hot corner, so go into a corner. Okay.
1 more minute. Just to give time to rejoin.
My name's Jens. In Europe, it's usually Jens, but in America, everybody says the J, so I go with Jens.
Great. People are just slowly joining back in. If you got a chance to read the article or at least start it, just give me a thumbs up. Great. Perfect. Yeah. So I just think I think we're not going to delve too much into this because we've done a lot of talking about this, but just thinking back, I think it's really helpful to think of an incident. Maybe you haven't gotten feedback that your intention didn't match, but if anyone ever has, I think that can be hard for us because we know our own heart, we know where we're coming from. So we feel like, we are trying our best, but even when we're trying our best, sometimes we can have an impact on people. So as teachers, as participants of this training, we're all going to try and be mindful, but we're going to make mistakes. And I just think it's really powerful to acknowledge the mistakes and move forward instead of trying to justify them, which is a really common thing. Like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean to offend you. Like, that's good to know that you weren't being purposeful and you're hurting. But I think it's also important to say, like, maybe I didn't mean to make you feel that way, but I see you feel that way, and that is valid, right? So I don't know if anyone, again, if people feel like really called, if you want to share anything on this. We don't want to spend too much time on this because we did talk a lot already. But if anyone has something they want to share on kind of intent versus impact with the group.
Can I share something?
I think so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Martha, welcome.
Hi. Just kind of a quick thing. Sometimes with acro, like feedback can be taken, like depending on how the person gives the feedback. It's important to remember to sometimes the message and the person, like, it's not the same thing. So if the message didn't come out right, it's important to not judge the person. It's the message, not the person. So that maybe the message didn't come out the way it should have. But it's important to remember to, this person may not have intended to say the way, or not knowing how it was going to be received. So a lot of times when the message gets received in another way, it's important to remember this is separate from the person. The messenger and the message are completely separate. And just that kind of a lot of times helps to, talk things over and, kind of get back to communicating and be able to receive the message properly.
I definitely think I know personally, I have an easier time hearing things sometimes from people I don't know as well. Because when I hear that same piece of feedback from someone who I have more history with, I layer everything else they've ever said to me on there.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's the camera.
yeah, no, I know. And then I'm going to share from here if you want that. So anyone else want to share before we move on to safety and spotting?
I have a funny sort of story, not acro related, because this happens to me all the time. So I was driving home one night and it was dark, and a man was crossing the street and they dropped their wallet in the middle of the crosswalk. And of course, I was driving towards them, so I stopped and I wanted them to know that they didn't have to rush. They could pick up everything that they dropped on the floor, because cars fell out of their wallet, I saw. So I rolled down my window and I was like, take your time! And apparently this flustered the person, and they proceeded to speed up even more and try and grab all their cards. They definitely missed one and run across the street. And my partner was laughing at me because he was like, oh my God, you just shouted at that person to move faster. And I was like, oh, no, I didn't, but I did it. And he's like, but you did. And I was like, darn it. So there you go.
Well, this really applies, I think, even to servant leadership, because it really becomes about what is our impact and not just our intent. And as you said, your intent was to make them feel one way and cause them to feel the opposite, right? So I think that as teachers in general, it's really important to be reflecting on, it's not about your intention, it's about what your impact is. So, and I mean, intention is important, but as you see, your intention was good, but the impact was the opposite. So, and that's a good example. Glad you brought that up. It's also a simple story that we can all relate to. So thanks for sharing.
And I live with someone who happens to yell as a default, and the volume at which you give the feedback is often, it's often felt.
She's very auditory, and I'm just not auditory. So I just yell and talk really loud when I get excited about things. Right, Taylor?
Julie and Nestor.
Never.
Yeah. And then we're gonna move on.
All right, Newly.
Yeah, it's kind of little funny story that happened to us maybe a long time ago. But one of the first times that we were having a session, Nestor and I, an acro session, and I got into, I think either it was bird or folded leaf or something, and Nestor had said something like, oh, what did you eat this morning? And of course, I was on my period. And so I didn't say anything at that moment, but I mentioned it later. Obviously, then I started crying, and it was the first time that Nestor saw me cry. It was over that. So I think it's also calling people out on the way that they're communicating too. Ooh, I didn't exactly like the way you said that. I think I'm more of the kind of person, I'm afraid to call somebody out because I don't want to offend anybody either, but also pointing that out as far as like helping them too.
Something that I observed too is the cultural difference. Okay, I'm from Latin America. In Latin America,
come closer to the computer.
Yeah, in Latin America, it's really common that you say some stuff and it's not offensive. You know, like the color of your skin, the sizes, or you play a lot with that and you take it like a joke. You don't take it so personal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and of course, I'm Latin. I live all my life there and change like the point of view. That experience for me was great because gave me like the opportunity to understand like, okay, no, for them it's like, for her it's like more delicate. I need to be more thoughtful when I say stuff. I'm like, hey, no, you know, try to do this or communicate in a better way. But at the beginning for me it was like, I'm talking with a friend, like, and I was joking, just like, oh, did you eat, like, you eat a lot, just, you know? But was a great experience, you know, in terms of communication, make it like easier to understand the society when you are working, for sure.
Yeah. And I think, again, going to diversity, like, one thing that's great is we do have so many people from different backgrounds in such an international community. So I think it's a two-way street. Like, those of us who are talking about sensitive communication and evolving also have to respect that in other cultures, that's just not the way it's done. So I think, you know, like Waka and I and Josh have had conversations where he's pushed someone's edges and we're like, oh, okay, here, yeah, you thought it was this way and they thought it was that way. And we like discuss like, well, how much should you adapt for them and how much should they adapt for you? And we don't, none of us have the answer yet, right?
Yeah, it's a really tough question because it's always changing too, you know, like one word that's offensive one week may not be offensive the next week, you know, and so learning to find the right language and being receptive to people in the moment, I think is key for me too. And when everybody's going to fuck up, and when you do, you can apologize and try to do it better. That's how I'm going to.
Awesome.
Okay.
And I just want to say one last thing about intent versus impact. This is, I like also like the little magical things that you can drop on people. And one of them is that when I'm in a class, I immediately start scanning the room for people that I don't know another way to say this, but like wear their emotions on their sleeve, where I can, in their face, I can see what am I saying and how is it reacting. And so Mickey's really good for that for me. She'll like, I'll say something ridiculous and she's just like, and I'm like, okay, that was too far. So, you know, I'm like really tapped into body language. And so oftentimes words are not the best for me. So by looking at people that are participants that are watching you talk and looking for the people in the group that have facial expressions show what they're thinking, has just been a really helpful tool for me.
Julie's volunteering to be that face. So if
yeah.
you're worried if you're offending someone.
Yeah. Sometimes, or if I'm like nailing it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm nailing it.
You're like, oh, Jill's nodding.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we got her to nod. That was a tough one.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, we got Ben to smile. I mean, that.
Yeah, and that's like the quintessential impact, right? You're actually like trying to see what they're getting, and bodies, and I'll say this time and again, bodies don't lie. So
they're called micro expressions, and I had to study them heavily. I have a master's in cybersecurity, so I had to study them in order to do some of the responses as to what people might use in order to get into other people's heads.
Interesting. Yeah.
But they're micro expressions, and it's crazy how much you can get information off of just the people around you by watching what their expressions are.
Yeah, and if you like a hypnotist, like hypnotize a whole, try to hypnotize a whole audience, and he started picking out the people that were receptive to hypnotism and brought them on stage. So in my mind, it's the same thing. I'm like picking out the people that have those micro expressions, and then I zero in on them and when I'm talking. Yeah, awesome, Tarl. Thanks for sharing that. I love that terminology. That's awesome.
Okay, we are going to move on because time. I'm going to share from here so that you can keep going.
Okay, everyone, bring your arms over your head. Stretch it out. Grab one wrist, grab the other.
Josh thinks we've been sitting too long.
Yeah, I'm ADD, and this is like really intense.
It is. Do you want me to be in present mode?
No, yeah, I don't. No, I don't.
Well, then you can still see people over
Okay.
here.
Shoulders. A little bit of this.
Now we can see everyone, and this is the screen.
Okay, cool. Can you all see me?
Yeah, why don't you sit in the
Yes.
center?
Thumbs up. Cool.